Bill Alcoholic. So they gave me a green stone, and Rangi blessed it. So I'm Maori now. I'm a little pale. This has been an incredible gift. I want to thank Jody and Darren for inviting us here. This is really, really special. And you hear a lot of people say that. For me, it's really true. About 2.5, almost 3 years ago, I had a liver transplant and I almost died. And so it's really good to be anywhere, really. This is the reunion tour. You know, it's really good to not be dead. We had a wonderful time in New Zealand, did a conference there, went down to the South Island, took a helicopter trip. I will never forget that. That was stunning. And now we're over here and we're going up to the Sunshine Coast after this. So I've always wanted to go to New Zealand and Australia, and I'm here. And so thank you for having us and showing us such love and affection. You're really sweet people, not like in the United States. So I'm supposed to talk about steps 10 and 11. They're my favorite steps because they're the ones I'm on. And but I should tell you a little bit about myself starting out. I was a surfer and a biker and a tough guy. And I never went to the beach. My motorcycle rarely ran. And I was afraid to fight. But I look really good. Had a chrome Nazi helmet for a hat and a primary chain for a belt and black greasy Levi's, big black boots with chains around them. I got tattoos all over me. But I had a clip-on earring because I didn't want to hurt myself. My biker nickname was Horny. I have it tattooed here on my arm. And it's misspelled. It's Horney. Horney. With an exclamation mark for emphasis. That's pretty much all you need to know. We've had some incredible speakers this weekend. Tim showed us how we're all not doing 4 and 5 correctly. And I'm very concerned about that. I sent a text to my sponsor saying we need to talk. Don explained the first step in powerlessness so well that I think we're all insecure now. It's just frightening. We had 2 Al-Anon speakers, 2. Don't you feel sorry for Tom? Whoa. Bob says about Linda that she doesn't have alcoholism, but she's a carrier. Astrid's an excitable girl, isn't she? That's a little scary. That's a real visual, thinking of Tom and Astrid together. And it's like, it took Juanita to think about that. What would that look like? My friend Tom is one of my dearest friends, and Bob is a real mentor, and a lot of insight. This is an incredible path we're on, isn't it? I mean, right now we're sitting in a room with several hundred people, most all of whom are aware of the fact that their lives have been saved. You can feel the energy of that. If you close your eyes, you get quiet enough. Because we're not supposed to be here, I don't think, in one respect, but here we are. Scott Peck and a few others have said that Alcoholics Anonymous is probably the single most significant social movement of the 20th century. If Alcoholics Anonymous goes on through the ages, it's only 85 years. It's new. If it goes on through the ages, you and I sitting here today will be considered the pioneers. The first people of the first 100 years. My life, I was born in 1947 and crosses Bob Smith and Bill Wilson. That's how close it is. That's how close we are to the flame. It's evolving. It's changing. Makes some of us really insecure. We look back and we go, oh, back in the good old days when we used to do it right. You'll hear some people talk about how we've lost our edge, that we've lost something, that we don't have as high a success rate as we once had. You'll hear that from some people. I think that's total bullshit. I think we're more powerful and effective and vibrant as we have ever been. I've traveled around AA a bit, and people talk about pockets of enthusiasm. They're all over, I was in Moscow earlier this year. I spoke at a meeting in Moscow, and Alcoholics Anonymous is very small and very new in Moscow. And there was a guy there that I met that put together this meeting to have me speak at. His name is Nikita Smirnov. Some stuff's just perfect, it's just perfect. And this guy is lit up. He is lit up. And I walked away from that experience thinking, we're okay. We're okay. And I'm a zealot. I believe it all. I'm a little weird about it. And one of the fun things about going around talking different places is being around the other zealots. The other speaker guys that are just a little bit weird about the whole thing, It's like the hub of their life. It's the center of everything. That's the way it is in my life and has been for a long time. I believe it. I believe it all. And that doesn't mean I'm always really enthusiastic, but mostly I'm so ensconced in it, I'm so trapped in it that when I've wanted to get away, I can't, because they call. I was dying. I mean, literally, I was dying before the liver transplant. It was looking really bad. And the phone would ring, and some guy would be on the other end of the phone, and he'd ask me, how you doing, Bill? And I'd start to tell him, I'm not doing well. And he would interrupt me and talk about himself. No compassion. So now I'm not feeling so bad about myself because I have a resentment. My life started on March the 27th, 1985. I was 37 years old when my life started. That's when it started. Prior to that, I had what I felt at the time when I woke up. I had wasted about 22, 23 years of my life. That's what it felt like. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't do anything. I accomplished nothing. I had a couple of marriages, 4 kids. And in the end, I was on that second marriage, and I had 2 little kids in the house. The girl was 3 years old, and the boy was 6 months old, and I had no emotional connection to another living human being. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I can't stand outside myself and have a separate experience and then compare it to the one that I'm having to determine that there's anything wrong. I don't know. The alcoholic life seems like the only normal one to me because it's the only one I've ever known. I don't know that I can't feel. I don't know that. I react to how you feel impacts me. So you impact me. That's why I have to have something in my system at all times to cushion the blow of you on me, you know. And I'd been that way for 22, 23 years since I was 14 or 15 till I was 37. I'd been like that, pretty much. Sometimes worse than others, but always with something in my system. I don't think I didn't have anything in my system for a month ever in that time. So I'm living in the house with these people, and there was a certain day, like any good gangster, I called my mom. That's what big badass people do. You know, next time somebody walks into your room, and you're one of your rooms, and they're a big, bad-looking, tough-looking Aussie bastard, you know, walks in there, you walk up and ask him, do you live with your mom? Chances are, you know. This is a woman that had been in Al-Anon for 30 years by that time. My dad got sober in 1954. And they're organized and prepared and focused, you know. You know, a lot of people make a lot of stupid Al-Anon jokes, and because they don't know what it is. But if you know what Al-Anon is, you can make some great Al-Anon jokes. You know? Just stop and think of the consciousness of a person that would live with us on purpose. You know? What are they thinking? You know? Oh, I can fix him. He'll be okay. So she came and she checked me into a place in Costa Mesa, California called Starting Point. And I spent 35 days in there. While I was in there, they made me wear a sign around my neck. I had to make the sign. We made it in crafts. There was a little rectangular piece of cardboard with a string that went through it, and it said, "I am not a counselor." Because evidently there was some confusion about that. Oh, that's true. Yeah. Then they let me out. They just let us out, don't they? Like we're okay. You know? Go forth, multiply. You know? Where do we end up? Here. This is it. This is the world's aftercare program. Do you know there's no referrals from AA? Did you know that? There's no place you go where you walk in and you say to them, "I'm from Alcoholics Anonymous, they sent me here." That place literally does not exist. You know? We are the counselors. Stop and think about this. I've been married 3 times. And I've been to a lockdown barbed wire on top of the fence mental institution twice. And people ask me for relationship advice. I give it to them. I figure, hell, you can't hurt them. You know, they're in AA, you know. I do workshops around the country on sponsorship, and one of the common questions, you know, people have this illusion that you have to have a lot of advice and answers to questions and stuff, and People will say, "Well, what if they ask you a question that you don't have the answer to?" I just tell them, make shit up. They don't know. You know? Go find out the answer and fix it later. It's on-the-job training, you know. Plus, whatever advice I give them couldn't possibly be worse than what they're planning on doing anyway. So I walk into Alcoholics Anonymous. Two things happen to me that I think are just pure luck. The first one's probably the most important thing. I just liked it. You heard that a couple times. Bob talks about that. It's not a common experience. It's like some of us, yes. But a lot of people have a difficulty struggling with it. You know, like I didn't want to be there and stuff, and I didn't feel part of because I didn't know anybody. I wasn't part of. But I got the joke right away. I mean, I left that meeting. It was the Gong Show at the Hermosa Beach Alano Club in 1985, a Friday night meeting, and everybody was dressed up, and Rocky Hudson was the secretary. He was clearly president of AA, right? And the room was packed, and it was Friday night, and everybody's looking for some action, and it was funny, and I left there, and I got in my car, and I'm driving home, and I thought to myself, you know, this may not be so bad. 'Cause I'm an old hippie from the 60s. Weird has always attracted me. And you are strange, you know, I mean. And I tell you, in 34 years, March the 27th, 1985, 34 years of sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous, I've never drifted away, and I have never been bored. I've been pissed off, and I've been treated poorly. I've been treated poorly on this trip. You know, my other friends, they're constantly making fun of me and stuff. It's kind of heartbreaking, you know. Rangi's the only one that sticks up for me. You know? But I have never been bored, and I can tell you, if you're sitting out there today and you're bored, it's because you're boring. It's not us. You know? And the second thing that happened to me is I asked a man to help me, and he actually did, which doesn't always happen. You know? He said to me, he says, read the doctor's opinion, make notes in the margin of what you agree with and what you don't. Be at my house Thursday at 5 o'clock and we'll discuss it. And I did my assignment, and I showed up at his house Thursday at 5 o'clock, and he did not trust me that I'd read it, and he had me sit there and read it to him out loud. Rule number one, when you're sponsoring people, make sure they read the book. Don't trust them. Read it with them. It'll probably help you, you know? And I've been doing that for a long time now. You know, you read a page, I read a page. You read a page, I read a page. And whatever conversation is meant to come up, it will come up in the process of reading that book. He told me something, I think, that I still believe today, that I feel strongly about. He said, I would be glad, my job as your sponsor is to take you through the process of the 12 steps. That's what we're going to do. I would be glad to talk to you about what you think your problems are so that you will not share about them in the meetings. The meetings are for recovery from alcoholism, not about how your day went. And I informed him, I said, down there at the Alano Club, they are breaking that rule right and left. Should we go tell them? You know? He said, no. He says, AA is a safe place. You can pretty much share anything you want. You can do anything. It can't kick you out. He said, I'm just describing to you my AA. So another blessing. I got a guy who hasn't bought into this weird thing that we don't express opinions or give advice. I'm a newcomer in AA. I need some good advice. I need somebody, and what kind of advice do you get, you know? Sometimes there's very directorial kind of sponsorship where you can't do anything without your sponsor's permission, take a job or something. That is not what I experienced. I came to him one time and I got into a screaming match with my wife. You know, I just went off on her. And I went and I was really upset, and I went and told him what she had done that caused that behavior, because it doesn't come from a vacuum. I'm justified in rage. You've done something incorrect. There is an injustice that needs to be adjusted immediately, and you're not paying attention. And when I stand up, all 6'5" of me, and start yelling at you, you shut up and start listening. And he said to me, as I was describing this altercation, he said, "Stop yelling at your wife." And he clearly didn't hear the explanation, so I went at it a second time, and he just looked at me and he said, "Stop yelling at your wife." And it was a very unsatisfying interaction with my sponsor. But that's the kind of advice I got from this guy. He was never interested. He has never been. I have the same sponsor now. I should have fired him several times, but he needs me now. He needs me. And he was always more interested in my behavior than my explanation for my behavior. And I needed that. I need that kind of advice. I need somebody to insert themselves into my justification, rationalization for my negative behavior. I'm a bully, and I'm a coward, and I cover up my fear with rage and screaming. And I don't like that guy. I don't want to be that guy. I met with him every week. I went to his house and we read a chapter in the book and we worked the steps as it came up in the book. At 6 months sober, I did an inventory. I did a 5th step, and it struck me. At 6 months sober, I had one of my first sober awakenings, spiritual experience. And here's what they look like to me. This is all about 10 and 11. He told me, go home, go be quiet for an hour after you've done this inventory and think about the first 5 proposals, and if there's anything you missed, give me a call. But go be quiet for an hour. And I actually did that. I went up on the hills in Palos Verdes, and I sat there with my book in my hand and just sat there for an hour and looked at the beautiful day. It was a summer day. And I went back to my house, and he told me, when you go back in your house, when you put the key in the door, think about the guy that walked through that door 6 months ago and the guy who's walking through it now. Stop and reflect on that, because you've changed. And I did that, and it struck me. And what struck me, what came to me is, my God, it's going to be like this now. I didn't know what this was, but what I knew is that the old life was over. It's done. And so far, it's proved to be true. I said my first prayer in AA, because I don't pray in AA. I don't pray. It's stupid. There's no God. But I prayed, and I said thank you. Invited him over for a barbecue or something silly. I couldn't come up with anything of any depth and profundity. It just seemed appropriate that maybe I should close my eyes, bow my head while nobody's looking, for fear that you might think I'm a weakling, and just say thank you, because something touched me. I don't know about you, but all I need to know about it is March the 27th, 1985. My whole life changed. Everything changed. And I didn't know that then. It's taken me a long time to really realize the profundity of that experience. That something touched me. I never asked for it. I just wanted to rest. My motivation was impure. And my life has changed. By the time I was making amends, before I was a year sober, I went about the process of that life-changing experience that Tom talked about. When you go to someone and you don't ever want to see them again, and you make the apology, you say I'm sorry, you try to make it right, you try to amend whatever was broken, you pay back the money. When you turn and walk away from that experience, you are changed. That is a cathartic experience. Right then and there, no hesitation. You don't have to wait. You've just changed. You cannot help but have some kind of self-esteem by doing that. No matter how poorly you feel about yourself, when I started doing that, I felt like a man, that I'm taking responsibility for my life. It was not easy to do. There were some people that didn't accept it well, for very good reason. My young children up in Oregon, we could tell a lot. Amends stories are wonderful. People will say, if you've been your own worst enemy, put yourself at the top of the list, that'll pretty much kill you. Put yourself at the bottom. By the time you get there, maybe you'll have some self-esteem. That's what happened to me. I made amends to myself by cleaning up the wreckage that I had done. And I hurt a lot of people, and including myself, certainly. Here's what I think's going on. To do 10 and 11, you need a little build-up, and you've heard some really good input on all these steps this weekend. The first step says that we're powerless. It said that we were powerless over alcohol because they didn't want us to run screaming down the street. But what you've heard this weekend is I'm powerless over absolutely everything. There's nothing I have any control over. Now, you and I, most all of us, we look out into the world and we make a determination that some stuff is good and some stuff is bad. We add the morality because that does not exist in nature. There's no immorality in nature. Stuff just happens. And I have difficulty with that. And the source of all the suffering in my life is my inability to accept things just exactly as they are. That doesn't mean I have to agree with it, but I have to understand that things are just happening. They're not happening to me. They're just happening. It's just happening. And when you're self-centered, it's all happening to me. And I have no control over what's happening. You're not doing anything to me. You're just doing what you do, and I happen to be in the blast radius, And sometimes it's me throwing the grenade, and I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just doing what I do. But it's not personal, and I have trouble with that. It looks personal. It feels personal. And all the problems in my life are because of you. It smells like you, it looks like you, and you're wrong and need to be adjusted. And I suffer. I suffer because of that. We were in Yellowstone National Park last year. It was a stunning experience. Karen and I went on a road trip, and we're driving through this beautiful valley, and there's something happening in this meadow out here, and we look out there, and there's a wolf eating an elk carcass. And there's a bunch of people stopped on the side of the road with telescopes and stuff looking at that. And you can see it with your naked eye. It's kind of a distance away. Big, long-legged, ratty-looking wolf, and they're nasty-looking things, just tearing this carcass apart. And we stop, and this woman lets me look through her telescope, and I'm looking at it, and it was a really stunning thing. And this old guy sitting on the bed of his truck says, "You know what happened?" So, "Yeah, the wolf killed the elk." And the guy says, "Well, not exactly." He says, "There was a cow elk that had a calf. And the wolves came and killed her calf. And she stood there in mourning for days. And then the wolves finally took her out. And I went, "Oh." And he goes, "Yeah." Now, you and I can look at that and say, that's not fair. It's unjust. It's not kind. But there it is. Is there any right and wrong about it? It's just nature. That seems to be an aspect of the world that you and I live in. And I look at it and I judge that some stuff shouldn't be. We have such a problem with that, we've created this thing called hope. And we talk about it like it's a good thing. That someday in the future, when things are good, because the present moment, right here, right now, is awful. It's wrong. And to live here in this moment is incorrect. So I'm going to create a fantasy world that in someday in the future, what I determine to be right or wrong will come to pass. And the lion will lay down with the lamb. If that happens, I'll bet that lamb will be nervous for eternity. It is the nature of the lion to eat the lamb. It's just the way it is. Right? I suffer from that. If I can grasp that powerlessness just a little bit, just the drugs and alcohol, the second step becomes operational. Evidently, I need to align myself with some power that can restore me to some form of sanity, enough sanity not to drink and use, but maybe just to get a glimpse of the overall truth of powerlessness. That this idea of powerlessness is good news, because even if I think I have power, I don't, and I suffer. So once I realize that I am powerless, I don't have to run the world anymore. It seems to operate without my input just fine. Okay? If I can do the second step just a little bit, the third step becomes operational. That's interesting because it says we're going to make a decision to turn our life and will over to what already has it anyway. I've been withholding myself from the totality of all things long enough. I'm going to acquiesce now and allow you to take me. Thank you very much. Where's my trophy? What life and will is it talking about? The inventory, the fears, broken relationships, and resentments, the end result of living a life with seeming power. That's what I'm left with. The fifth step is where I physically and literally turn it over. I tell myself, maybe for the first time in my life, and someone else, and this power, here's my stuff, I'm pooped, you take it, right? And I give it up. And this is the first attempt at taking responsibility for my own life. Whether you think there's a third or fourth column, what I'm looking for is my faults and mistakes. That's the driving force of my insufferable life, is these things that I do that create chaos in my life. And I begin to take responsibility. I begin to see that it really isn't you, that maybe it's me. 6 and 7 are 2 paragraphs in the book Bob talked about. They're real simple, clean. You say the prayer, it's over, and we'll be working those 2 steps for the rest of our natural lives. You don't have to list your character defects. You can help. It's helpful to look at it because they will come and visit you with alarming regularity, And now that you're awake, that your head's popped out of your ass, it's really hard to ignore what's cooking, Are you going to say that to them again? Sometimes the answer is yes, I can't help myself. 8 and 9 is when the transformation begins. Like I discussed, you go and you do that, it will transform you. It is the mechanism that's used to rid ourselves of the resentments in our lives, is being able to own our part of it and try to clean that up. This brings us to 10, 11, and 12. Some people call it the maintenance steps. Maintain what? What are we maintaining now? My experience is that life is dynamic. It's not static. I'm not going to maintain some position. It's going to continue to evolve. If I'm in a good spiritual shape, I'm going to be flexible because stuff's coming down the road, sometimes wonderful stuff. Coming here. This is a wonderful life experience for my wife and I both. Sometimes the next indicated thing is just really cool. And other times stuff happens, health issues, and lots of stuff happens. There's nothing to maintain. Awareness is everything. It's everything. The 10th step is about self-awareness as compared to self-obsession. It's about making amends in the present moment because I know what's going on now. It doesn't mean I have to be perfect. Sometimes stuff doesn't change, but I know whose fault it is now. I'm awake now. I'm not asleep anymore. If what happened to me on March the 27th is I was awakened, which I believe is what happens to us, I woke up. You ever woke up in the morning and felt a bit drowsy? You ever woke up in the morning and wondered where you are? I did that this morning. Let's see, New Zealand, Australia, where the hell? Who's speaking to, but I'm awake. I'm awake now. The rest of the journey is to take that awakening and allow it to evolve into an awareness where I'm aware that I'm awake and maybe there's something I can do with this. Maybe there's a purpose for this to happen. Maybe there's a purpose in my life. So when I step on somebody's foot, I don't have to write about it, call 3 people, share about it in the noon meeting. I can turn around and go, I'm sorry. I know that's a shocking revelation. It really isn't that neurotic. It's not that deep and profound. I don't have to explain to the person why I stepped on their foot because their feet are too big or something. I can just say, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have stepped on your foot. I'll try not to do it again. Get the hell out of my way, The 11th step, and I believe 10 and 11 are joined at the hip, You know, who's that said that they just came up with 6 and 7 because they wanted to make 12? I think 10 and 11 are like that too, you know. I mean, most people talk about doing a 10-step inventory. It's described in the 11th step. I think they're joined at the hip. You know, it's a great way, in that page, a great way to start the day. Before we begin, you think about God. Well, I don't know about you, but first thing I do is go to the toilet, you know. And I get out my iPhone and I read the spiritual stuff that people send me. It's how I start the day. I try to start the day that way. But it would behoove us in the 11th step to have some kind of practice, something that we do that brings us closer to whatever it is that touched us. And as human beings, we want to dogmatize everything. We want to understand. We want to know. We want to align ourselves with the right God. You know, I mean, we have these windy arguments about the difference between my will and God's will. I think that is a major egoic position. I love the idea of me being able to have a battle of wills with the power that drives the entire universe. You know? I don't think there's any difference between my will and God's will. God's will is what's happening right now. What else could it possibly be? You know? And if I don't like what's happening right now, is there really a battle going on? Or am I just disturbed? Because here it is. This is what's happening. If I don't like it, so what? It doesn't change. That's the worst problem about that. There's all kinds of stuff I don't like. Look at the geopolitical situation in the world today. If I was running things, it'd be a lot different. And I get all cranked up about it, and it doesn't change. The only thing that happens is Bill gets all cranked up, right? That's all that happens. I have a problem with all of that. In the 11th step, it talks about meditation. My sponsor says that it's not extra credit. It's in the step, you got to do it. The other thing he says, which is cute, he says, you can't stay sober on 11 and a half steps. You know, shut up. You know? He also has told me over the years, he says, Bill, you will be reduced to prayer and meditation. I have been reduced to prayer and meditation, you know. It's a marvelous journey. In meditation, you can watch yourself think. You can close your eyes, breathe, and just focus on the breath going in and out of your nose. And what will happen is the mind will wander. It doesn't like being in the present moment. There's nothing for it to do, right? Because everything is perfectly fine in the present moment. How could it possibly be any different than it is? Here we are right here, and there's just nothing for it to do. And what it does is it thinks. And when you're focused on the breath, it'll wander off. And then you notice that it has wandered away. And you gently bring it back to the breath. Absolute, conclusive proof that you are not your thinking mind. Think about that. That is a game-changing experience. We spend so much time thinking about how we are in relation to how you are. We all talk about it all the time. We talk about how other people's opinion are important to us. We realize that's not good. And we try to work on not worrying about what other people think about us. And we constantly, just constant grinding, this constant thing about changing how I think, therefore it will change how I feel, then things will be better. I'll have better relationships. With this experience, all you're doing when you're working on yourself is feeding the beast. It loves the attention. Doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. If there's been trauma, it loves it even better. It'll just grind on it and grind on it all the time. Part of the human experience. When this happened for me, when I realized the truth of this, that I am not this egoic or this thinking mind. It's an aspect of my nature. It's not the enemy. In AA, we talk about it in the third person, don't we? We say things like, my head is out to get me. We talk about it, and we've got it. We make it adversarial because that's who we are. You know, we got to kill it, crush it, change it, mess with it, you know, smash it, destroy it. I think all we have to do is ignore it. Just ignore it. And after a while, it will sort of die off from just neglect, you know. I mean, it'll come back up. It's, you know, it's like an old buddy, kind of like one of your real good friends that likes to get loaded a lot. It's like, you know, it's just, it's constant. It never ends. A lot of times it thinks about cool stuff, you know, hot rods and chicks and stuff. You know, a lot of times it's fun. It's not all negative. But isn't it true that God comes to us in our brokenness? So what you and I suffer from, I believe, this is my opinion, we make the mistake of blaming this on alcoholism. We're just neurotic, you know? I mean, you watch how a kid grows up. A kid is normally, naturally self-centered. They're appropriately self-centered. That's why we have so much trouble with them. They're more self-centered than we are. They're competition, you know? But they feel separate, different, you know, all of this stuff. And then they grow up. If they're not alcoholic and drug addicted, they have a series of experiences, and sometime in their mid-20s, they kind of come out of it and they begin to have healthy relationships and things change. You and I missed all that. We were loaded during the learning experience, most of us. So now we come to AA at 37 years old, and we're going to grow up now, and the chances of us doing that and looking good are really slim, you know? Because we look like we're growing up, but we're not, you know. Here it is, you know. It's going to be, everybody gets to wear the clown suit. You know, I've worn it many times. I keep it in the closet and dust it off every once in a while. I wear it less often now, but it's still there. You know, I'm going to behave badly. I'm just going to act weird. I'm going to take stuff that's personal and it's not. Something real will happen, and then I react. And my reaction then becomes the problem. What is wrong with Bill? You know, what's going on with Bill? All the guy did was step on his foot. It's like, you know. When this happened for me, at 10 years sober, I blew up my life. I ran off with another woman and blew up my family. I lost a home, and I ended up living in a storeroom over my office in El Segundo. Sober. When you do that kind of stuff sober, like the kind of stuff you did when you were drinking, it's really painful because they've taken away my medication. And I'm standing in the storeroom looking at myself in the mirror going, you did this. Nobody did this to you. You did. I was humiliated. Then the girlfriend dumped me, you know. Yeah, what are you laughing at? Don't you love the love in AA, you know? Glad that wasn't me. There's 3 levels of sobriety. Level 1, you got a sponsor, you're working the steps, you're going to meetings, you're sponsoring other people. Then you transcend that, you go to level 2. Level 2 is when you have it all figured out and you become the teacher. You don't really have to do the other stuff because you've already done that. You know, been there, done that. I've moved on now. Now I'm the professor. And I'm standing here at the podium telling you how to do it because I've done it all and I have all the experience, and they gave me a forum to do that, so now you're teaching. You don't really need to talk to your sponsor. He's given you all the help he can possibly give you. You know, you've moved on. Then there's level 3. Level 3 is when it all falls apart and you get back to level 1 because that's all there is. So I hit level 3. I went to my sponsor and I said, I need some help. I'm really a mess. I need some help. I just blew up my life. And he said, go find God. And I said, please, I don't need mindless platitudes. I need real practical help, not lame shit like that, you know? I'm no newcomer. And we were at a retreat. This is a true story. This arrogance is one of my special attributes. I'm sitting on this bench, and he got up, and he never yelled at me. He was one of these, but he got up and he leaned over me and he yelled at me. He said, there is nothing else. You talk a good game. Go do it. And I almost hit him. I didn't want to hear that. It was stupid to me. You know, and I'm an official AA guru at this time, man. You know, you know. So back in the day, right, I was the phony biker with the clip-on earring. In sobriety, I became the phony AA guru. Same guy. Same guy. Maybe a little healthier. People got helped. A lot of good work happened. I did a lot of good work. My motivation was purely egoic. It was all self-centered. I wanted to look good. I was working very diligently to make a name for myself in an anonymous organization. You can do that. It's kind of weird. You get laughed at a lot, you know, and which is very healing, to be honest with you. Go find God. So what did I have to do? Get on my knees in the morning, ask for help, read the 24-hour-a-day book, level 1. Basic, simple stuff. And he's right. I was talking a good game. I wasn't doing it. I could give a guy a 20-minute lecture on how he should live his life. This is true. And I gave this guy a 20-minute lecture, and he left, and I thought, boy, that is some good stuff. I should record that and hand it out to all my sponsees, you know. And then I thought, maybe I should even do some of it. I called my sponsor, and I said, I had an awakening. I said, I think I'm a hypocrite. And he goes, no, Bill, you're a liar. It's worse than you think, you know. You've heard it this weekend, second surrender, whatever you want to call it. There's an odd thing that happens between 8 and 12 years sober. Happens to most of us. The way I describe it, what happened to me, is the sheer weight of carrying my personality around just crushed me. You know, and big chunks of it fell off. And I told him, I said, I think I should quit talking at meetings. I think I should stop all this stuff. I need to just shut up and sit in rooms. And he goes, you don't get to pick and choose what you will and won't do, but why don't you start telling those people the truth? I said, what do you mean? I'm not lying. He goes, stop doing theater and talk about what's really going on. This is 11-step stuff. This is 10 and 11. Self-awareness. I mean, how do we get self-aware? Usually around here when God comes to us in our brokenness, drunk or sober. I mean, he certainly came to me in my brokenness on March the 27th, 1985. You know, something entered into my life that changed me. I was broken. You don't have to get good and then God comes to you. The worse you are, he seems to like you a lot better. I don't know what that's about. You know, he makes most of the saints and gurus you talk about used to be killers and murderers and awful people, and then something happened, right? If you read about it, that's usually what happens. Well, at 10 years sober, he came again in the form of my sponsor, telling me the truth. He looked at me and told me the truth with love in his heart. Just the hard truth. You're a phony. You're doing it again. I know you, Bill. We're all watching. I walked back into my home group after all this happened. This was a very public fall from grace. All my sponsees ran like lemmings leaving the ship, you know. You know, I mean, everybody knew I'm loud. I'm not a very quiet service guy, you know. You know how they say do something kind for somebody and then don't tell anybody? I don't think I've ever accomplished that. If you don't know about it, it didn't really happen, you know. And that, so when it came down. I walked into my home group, and this guy, Mike, comes up to me, and he's had my number forever. And he just loves me, but I'd always catch him looking at me, shaking his head like, whoa, he actually said that, you know. And he came up to me and threw his arms around me and whispered in my ear, welcome to AA. We've been waiting for you. And then he laughed hysterically and walked off. That's love. That's identification. right? I will be reduced to prayer and meditation. I've been reduced. At 20 years sober, I got sick. Hepatitis C. My liver started failing. I was on the interferon treatment. Made me really sick. The rage came back. I have rage. Now I just get pissy. That's a distinct improvement. And that's what I'm used to in my character defects. They kind of morph. They change. The edges fall off. I don't become a different person. I just evolve. We all evolve. You know, life is dynamic. It's not static. It includes us. If our hearts are open, we will change inevitably. You can't help it. Getting old is interesting. You know, I'm 72 years old. I look in the mirror and I go, dude, what happened? You know? And at 20 years sober, I was reduced again. I was really sick, and I was going to go lead a retreat in Hawaii. And my friend Christophe, he's French, so he's an asshole. He just sort of the way things are, you know. And he comes over to my house. He knew he was watching me circle the bowl, right? I'm going down. And he brought me The Power of Now. He said, read this. And I said, I've read stuff like that. And he yelled at me, God damn it, Bill, read it. And I read it on the plane on the way over, and it changed my life. Big shift? No, it opened a little bit more. It's a different voice, you know. Sandy Beach he used to say a wonderful thing. He would hold the big book and he'd say, this is not the truth. And you get really quiet when he would do that. Like, what are you saying, Sandy? He says, it's a pointer towards the truth. So if it's pointing, I should understand it really well so I can see where it's pointing. This entered my life some time ago, just being a seeker, reading stuff, sitting and listening to different weirdos talk about God, trying to open my heart. And what I've come to is I think God, by its very nature, is impersonal. I hear you talk about having a personal relationship. I didn't understand that. And I think the ego wants to have its own personal relationship, specifically one that's better than yours, right? That's the way it works in my life. I think God, by its very nature, is impersonal. All there is that. In Alcoholics Anonymous, in any spiritual path, is a program of subtraction that takes away everything that stops me from seeing that I already have everything I need. There's nothing missing in me. I am not broken. I'm just delusional, and I can't see the connection. I can't possibly be separate from the universe. It's not possible. That feeling that children have when they feel separate and different, is it real? No. It's not possible that I can be separate from nature. I am part of it. We are all star stuff. We're all part of the same thing. We're all connected. The mistake we make is that we see each other, there's subject-object, right? And I used to think for a while, well, maybe that's an illusion. And that one of these guru guys told me, no, there has to be a subject-object. There has to be separation in order for there to be reality. The mistake we make is that we think we're independent of each other, of nature. We are not independent. We are connected. Living proof of that is Alcoholics Anonymous. It has done a really good job of keeping the threat alive. And we're all underneath that, and we're all connected. And we have something that brings us together, the threat of this alcoholism that we suffer from. I don't think there's a threat any longer. What I have done, I believe what's happening to me is I am beginning to fall in love with you. That weekend on that retreat, I walked up the side of this hill, and there was a little shrine of the Virgin Mary. Somebody had made this, just a little shrine in the side of a hill with a lot of little things hanging around it and stuff. And there's an old, rickety old bench sitting there next to it. And I was feeling really ill, and I walked up the side of this hill, and I sat on the bench. And I closed my eyes and just breathed. And I opened my eyes and looked across this little valley, and the wind blew through the trees on the other side of the valley. And I just got it. What is it? Who cares? Who cares? It's an experience. It's not intellectual. It's not a thought. It's an experience. It's a knowingness that transcends the intellect. It's not egoic. You just get it. Now, I've gone back and led that retreat several more times. I've tried to recreate that experience, and it's impossible. But I'm a drug addict. Let's get high again, But I have gotten high again. In my backyard, sitting quietly, breathing, just breathing. And you'll hear a sound. Maybe it's a car driving down the street. Maybe it's a leaf blower. And we look at that and we say it's disturbing. No, it's in the present moment, is it not? And you try to feel, is there a separation between me and the sound? And you realize no. And you're not thinking about what the sound is, you're just experiencing it. It's in the present moment. And what I've learned from this is the present moment has a feel to it. It has a texture. And the more you do it, the more you breathe and you do this, you get a sense of how that feels. And that during the course of a day when you're not there, you notice that. And you can return to it at will because you know what it feels like now. And you notice that you're not there and you can return to it. And that is all there is. That is all there is. And it's not personal. It's like the AA 12 steps. There's only one program in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's the 12 steps. There's only one. There isn't a different program for every person in AA. But each one of us experiences it differently. But it's only one program. That's the way I perceive this 11-step, this God thing. It's always around. It's always here. I just don't notice it. And every once in a while I stop and I can feel it. The other thing, the next speaker you're going to hear, Beth, is going to talk about the 12th step. The 12th step is the mechanism that causes this to happen. The worst problems I have are the aspects of my nature that are missing. This lack of compassion that I didn't know I had because I'd never felt it before. When I started working with you, I realized after some years have gone by that you are the teacher. I used to think I was the teacher. Now I realize that you're being sent to me. I'm going to have an experience with you. You're going to bring something to the table. And now that I can feel you in my life, which I couldn't before, I'm going to learn from this experience. So the mechanism, we are in an organization where people's lives are saved every day. Every day. And the mechanism that's used for that is us. We are the instruments. We are the tool. It would behoove us to try to be a good one, to try to be awake, to increase in understanding and effectiveness. You ever heard somebody say, the longer I'm sober, the less I know? When I hear them say that, I think, aren't you paying attention? I mean, you can sit around and do nothing and pick some shit up, man. It's like, I know a lot more about what I'm doing now than I did before. Do I have all of that? Of course not. But if you come to me and ask me for help, I have something for you. I think I do. It may not work out between us, but I'll do the best I can. I'll tell you, if I'm not doing that, then what is the manifestation of this 10 and 11? If I'm not doing that, how am I going to learn? Some years ago, I started doing 5th steps with the guys I sponsor to break down the sponsor-sponsee, the role-playing, the chrome Nazi helmet, the phony AA guru thing. I'm the sponsor, you're the sponsee, and don't ever forget it. You got to go get me coffee, I get that, but I don't want that. That's not what I'm looking for. You and I are in this together. We are not independent of each other. There isn't any specific role that I play. But I can tell you this, my experience is sometimes I'm a dad. Sometimes I've become a grandfather now. Sometimes that's the role. People come in here in their brokenness, they don't trust, and you want to trust me? You can trust me. I'm a pretty decent guy. That's my role. I can allow myself to be used that way. Sometimes people have hung on to me until they find somebody else better fitted for them. I've had that happen to me a lot. But I am an instrument. I am an instrument, and I think that's clear. That's my purpose in life. I'll leave you with this. They say that you got to give it away to keep it. No. You have to give it away to even get it. Thank you.